The 1970s were a time of bell-bottoms, disco lights, and unforgettable memories that shaped an entire generation. If you grew up in the 70s, you know it was more than just a decade. It was a feeling. A time when Saturday mornings meant cartoons and afternoons were spent riding bikes with friends until the streetlights came on. The music, the style, the freedom. It was a world unlike any other, and only those who lived through it truly understand the magic. Let's take a trip back and relive the 15 things only 70s kids will understand. Saturday morning cartoons. Before streaming services and on-demand viewing, Saturday mornings were sacred for one reason: cartoons. Kids in the 1970s would wake up early, grab a bowl of sugary cereal, and park themselves in front of the TV for hours of animated magic. Shows like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, The Jetsons, Fat Albert, and the Flintstones were weekly staples, and it wasn't uncommon to plan your entire weekend around them. The joy of Saturday morning TV had a magic that today's kids, with their endless choices, might never fully appreciate. The scent of Avon perfume. Who could forget those tiny, uniquely shaped perfume bottles from Avon? The 70s were a golden era for Avon ladies who brought fragrances, lotions, and beauty products right to your door. The most memorable part for many kids was the adorable bottles shaped like animals, dolls, or cars. If your mom or grandmother ordered from Avon, your home was likely filled with floral, spicy, or powdery scents that could instantly take you back to that time. The bottles themselves became collectibles, but it was the signature Avon scent that sticks with 70s kids the most. Schoolhouse rock. Educational magic. Remember learning grammar, history, and math through catchy tunes on Schoolhouse Rock. From Conjunction Junction to I'm Just a Bill, this educational TV series made learning fun and cool. These short animated segments aired during Saturday morning cartoons and taught kids everything from how a bill becomes a law to the intricacies of the American Revolution, all with sing-along lyrics that still pop into your head today. There was no better way to learn than through a song, and 70s kids will forever have these jingles stored in their memory. Tang and space-age snacks. No decade embraced space-age novelty quite like the 1970s, and nothing symbolizes that better than Tang. This powdered orange drink was marketed as the drink of astronauts, and if it was good enough for NASA, it was good enough for you. Every 70s kid remembers the bright, sugary taste of Tang and those futuristic TV commercials that made you feel like drinking it would transport you to outer space. Alongside Tang, other space-themed foods, like space food sticks and freeze-dried ice cream, became staples in kitchens everywhere, leaving a taste of the future in every sip and bite. The Atari 2600, the beginning of home gaming. Before PlayStation and Xbox, there was the Atari 2600. Released in 1977, it was the first console to make home gaming widely accessible. If you were lucky enough to have an Atari, your weekends were filled with simple but addictive games like Pong, Space Invaders, and Asteroids. The joysticks were clunky, the graphics were basic, but the thrill of controlling the game right in your living room was revolutionary. For kids in the 70s, Atari was the ultimate symbol of cutting-edge entertainment, and it laid the foundation for the gaming culture we know today. Roller skating at the rink. Every kid who grew up in the 70s remembers the joy of lacing up their roller skates and hitting the rink. The local roller rink was a social hub, a place where you could glide to the beat of disco music, show off your moves, and maybe even work up the nerve to ask your crush to skate during the slow songs. Decked out in bell-bottoms and glittering shirts, kids of the era would spend entire weekends skating under flashing neon lights, with the tunes of ABBA and Bee Gees blasting in the background. It wasn't just an activity. It was an experience that perfectly encapsulated the spirit of the 70s. Mood rings and pet rocks. Fads that swept the nation. The 1970s were full of quirky trends. and two of the biggest were mood rings and pet rocks. Mood rings, which supposedly change color based on your emotions, were the epitome of 1970s, mysticism and self-expression. Every kid wanted to know if they were cool blue or fiery red, and the rings added an element of mystery to everyday life. And then there was the pet rock, a literal rock that became a nationwide sensation. While it may seem absurd now, in 1975, kids everywhere were asking for pet rocks in cardboard boxes complete with air holes. Both trends were fleeting, but for a brief time, they were the must-have items for any 1970s kid. Pop rocks, candy, a popping sensation. Long before today's viral food trends, Pop Rocks took the 1970s by storm. This fizzy, crackling candy would explode in your mouth, making you feel like you were part of some kind of magical science experiment. Rumors swirled about the dangers of eating Pop Rocks and drinking soda. Spoiler, you wouldn't explode. But that didn't stop kids from loving the thrill of the sensation. No 70s kid will ever forget the joy of ripping open that neon packet and feeling the tiny rocks burst on their tongue. Wacky Packages stickers. If you were a kid in the 70s, chances are you were obsessed with Wacky Packages. Those hilarious trading cards and stickers that parodied everyday consumer products. Whether it was Creepy Crisp instead of Kleenex, or Cap'n Crud instead of Cap'n Crunch, these stickers turned boring household items into laugh-out-loud collectibles. Kids would trade them at school, stick them on notebooks, and proudly display them as badges of humor. In a pre-internet world, Wacky Packages were a clever, satirical way for kids to connect with pop culture. Listening to music on 8-track tapes. Before CDs, MP3s, or streaming, the coolest way to listen to your favorite tunes was on an 8-track tape. The 1970s were the heyday of this bulky music format, and 70s, kids remember their parents' living rooms being stacked with 8 tracks of Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, the Eagles, and more. Popping in a new tape and waiting for the click as it moved to the next track was part of the ritual. Sure, the sound quality wasn't always perfect, but to a 70s kid, an 8-track player was the ultimate in musical technology. Drive-in movie theaters. Drive-in theaters were a hallmark of the 1970s, offering families and friends a chance to watch movies under the stars. Piling into the family station wagon with blankets, pillows, and snacks, you'd head to the local drive-in for a double feature. Kids would hang out in the back seat, or sometimes in lawn chairs, while the film flickered on the giant outdoor screen. Whether it was a big blockbuster or a B-movie, the drive-in experience wasn't just about the film. It was a summer tradition that every 70s kid looked forward to. Holly Hobbie. For girls in the 70s, Holly Hobbie was more than just a character. She was a symbol of innocence and simplicity. With her patchwork dress, big floppy bonnet, and sweet country style, Holly Hobbie was featured on everything from dolls to lunchboxes, stationery, and even wallpaper. She represented a more innocent time, often reminding people of a nostalgic version of American life. Whether you owned a Holly Hobbie doll or had her likeness plastered across your room, her presence was comforting and familiar to so many kids of the 70s. The Slinky. Though technically invented in the 1940s, the Slinky found its true golden era during the 1970s. Every 70s kid had a Slinky, and it was impossible to resist sending it down a flight of stairs, mesmerized by its gravity-defying movement. There was something magical about the way this simple metal coil could walk on its own. You'd spend hours trying to perfect your Slinky technique, though more often than not, it would end up hopelessly tangled, much to your frustration. But the joy it brought before that twist of disaster made it worth every minute. Smokey and the Bandit and car chase obsessions. The 1970s were obsessed with fast cars, and no film captured this better than Smokey and the Bandit. Released in 1977, This Burt Reynolds classic became a cultural phenomenon. Kids of the 70s dreamed of driving a black Pontiac Trans Am just like Reynolds' character, and would spend hours racing their Hot Wheels cars in makeshift tracks. Whether you were zooming through imaginary chases or just marveling at the bandits' daring escapes, Smokey and the Bandit and the car culture it represented were unforgettable parts of growing up during that era. TV dinners in aluminum trays. In the 70s, convenience was king, and nothing was more convenient than a TV dinner. Packaged in aluminum trays, these meals could be popped into the oven. This was before microwaves became a household staple, and eaten right in front of the television. Every kid in the 70s had their favorite TV dinner, whether it was the classic fried chicken, Salisbury steak, or turkey with mashed potatoes. The ritual of eating from those compartmentalized trays while watching your favorite TV show was a regular part of life for many families. Sure, the food wasn't gourmet, but there was something special about having your entire meal packaged perfectly for TV viewing. The 1970s may be in the past, but for those who grew up during the decade, the memories remain strong. From quirky toys and unforgettable snacks to the simple pleasures of a drive-in movie or a beloved Saturday morning cartoon, the 70s was a time of discovery and joy. Each of these items has left a lasting imprint on the hearts of 70s kids, transporting them back to a world where life was simpler and a lot more colorful. What do you remember most fondly about growing up in the 1970s?